Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. To start off today's show, I'm going to review the film We Live in Time, and in the second half, I'll be reviewing the film Memoir of a Snail. Starting off with We Live in Time, this is a film I was very excited for. I love Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. They're both the leads of the film. Andrew Garfield was in some stuff like the Spider-Man movies and Hacksaw Ridge. He's just one of the best actors working today, in my opinion. He's fantastic. And then Florence Pugh has just been also incredible over the last bunch of years. She's done some Marvel stuff also with Black Widow, and she plays her sister Yelena. She's going to be in Thunderbolts next year. She was in the movie Fighting with My Family. She was very good in that. She also is in Dune, Midsummer, just tons of movies. They're both amazing actors, and just them alone made me really excited. This movie is also directed by John Crowley, and I haven't seen his movie Brooklyn, which is very widely acclaimed, by the way, but he made this movie The Goldfinch, which I was so excited for before it came out. It was probably one of my most anticipated movies of 2019. Also, unfortunately, probably one of the biggest disappointments of 2019. I think it had so much potential. I don't even really know if I blame Crowley as the reason it wasn't good. I blame like the script on it. It was adapting a book. I don't know, something just didn't come together about it quite well, but so I was, a bit skeptical about this movie coming out, but reviews were positive, so that made me think it could be a good movie. And overall, I would say it's a pretty good movie. Not great, but definitely good. And the first thing you'll notice when watching this movie is that it's told entirely out of order. And that's something that I can go either way on. Nonlinear storytelling is a tool that, when used, can be excellent. Like, I loved the way it was used in Strange Darling earlier this year. That movie kind of took the order of things and shifted it around completely, so that way, each time you got, to a new chapter, even if it was out of order, you were getting new information, and the way it's told kind of makes the movie special. Same with Pulp Fiction, a movie that really takes the order of events, shifts it around, and finds a way to really enhance the story as a result. And then there are other times, like I mentioned last time with Woman of the Hour, where it's somewhat nonlinear storytelling actually kind of was hurtful to the movie and kind of got me lost. And I would say We Live in Time is kind of in between both of those. It's not something that I loved, and it's not something I really disliked either. And it's largely because the approach is very sporadic. The order of events doesn't really have a pattern. Like, it's not, it's not like Strange Darling or Pulp Fiction, where it really feels like, you're staying for a long sequence, and then it moves to something else, and, like, it never really ends up coming back. Like, the way this movie does it is that you'll just kind of go to one scene from, way in the future, and then you'll go to a scene way in the past, and then you'll go somewhere in between. You're jumping around a lot, and I didn't find that I was ever lost watching it, but I didn't feel like it was totally connecting to tell a larger, grand story, or really enhancing the way the movie is told. Like, I feel like if I watched the movie in order, it would be the same movie to me, pretty much. It didn't change the way I feel like certain outcomes were. It didn't, like, enhance when reveals came. Like, it didn't make them more surprising or more effective. But it did make the movie more thematically, I think, important. And what I did like about it is that it really kind of emphasized what I think the main theme of the movie is, which is living in the now. I'm not going to say too much on that. I think it's good to just see it for yourself. But there really is this whole thing of, like, don't look too far into the future. Don't, like, look too far in the past. Just stay in the present where you are right now. And having this movie kind of play out where you see each scene individually, you kind of just appreciate each scene individually. You really appreciate this moment in time. And you're not thinking about what's coming ahead or what just happened. You're thinking about, like, what you're watching in the moment. Because, you get a nice long sequence. You move on to another scene that may be completely unrelated, and it's almost like you're watching a bunch of short films just kind of come together to form a giant puzzle by the end. But that's just kind of where it falls. I like what it does thematically, but I think it also might have impacted the groove and the pacing a little bit. It's only an hour and a half. It feels a little longer than that. I think, honestly, it's one of those times where I could go with or without the way it's told, But maybe on rewatch it'll be a little better in that sense. Maybe I'll appreciate the nonlinear storytelling a little more. Now, I've already commented on Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh, but I also just want to put out there that they are really awesome in this movie. Their chemistry is great. You really feel like they have a connection with each other, and when they have these moments of love and tenderness, you really feel that. And when they also have these moments of frustration and anger, you feel that too. You really feel like these people care about each other. They're trying to, do right by one another, but also they make mistakes. They feel human, which leads me to my next point also about the writing. The writing is pretty organic here, and I like that the drama wasn't always, forced from melodrama and instead was very character driven. This entire movie is, in a nutshell, very character driven. There's not a single thing here that happens because the plot moves it forward. You always have plot driven movies and character driven movies. Plot driven is when the story kind of drives the film, and character driven is also always when the characters make the choices that impact the story. And that's what happens here, again, because there's not really a story being told as much as it's just like you're seeing these scenes play out and form a story by the end of it. It's all always in the interest of the characters. Like, if a character wants to do something, they do it, and then that impacts how other people feel. I just really like that. I think it's really nice. It just felt fresh a little bit. It elevated the movie a little bit more for me. I like that it's just, melodrama is one of my least favorite things in these types of movies. I hate when it's like, drama just for the sake of drama in the movie. I mean, there is a lot of drama, but it feels natural. It feels within character and feels like something that was built up beforehand. It's not just like totally random. So I like that. It felt very carefully considered. So I like that a lot. Some other positives of note are that it's a very nice looking movie. There's a lot of good shots in here, good cinematography, nice shots of like landscapes and stuff. I just really like that. And then I enjoyed the score as well. I think it does a good job of elevating the scenes without being too on the nose. It's just it just kind of plays nicely. I think the themes are pretty good and memorable. I've been listening to it a few times outside of the movie, and I like the score as well. As for issues, one issue I have is that the story isn't all that original or surprising. It kind of contradicts a little bit of what I said, like, oh, the movie kind of feels fresh because it's not doing like the melodrama thing. But on the other hand, it's not a movie that feels all that fresh in its story, like, it feels like a story I've seen before. Don't want to spoil anything, but just like the beats this movie has are things we've seen in other movies, namely like young adult, book adaptations that have, people falling in love and just going through life's challenges. It's not that surprising. Nothing that happens in the movie really took me by surprise, but it is elevated a little bit because of the performances and because of the writing that helps. Besides the non-linear storytelling this movie has, it feels like a movie that I've seen before, but to be fair, it's done better, and that's kind of the A24 approach, the studio that made this movie. They're kind of always known for just, like, elevated whatever, like elevated horror. Like, they'll take a script, for a horror movie or something that, like, another studio would have done, and it would have been kind of generic, but they have these better filmmakers behind them, so as a result, they feel a bit more elevated and artsy and more professional, I guess. I don't want to discount other people, but, just kind of feels a bit more well-made in some regards. Another thing, and I don't even really know if this is a complaint per se, but I was expecting to be a bit more of an emotional wreck by the end of it, which, I mean, not that I'm saying, like, I'm mad at the movie for not making me more emotional by it, but I just didn't feel like it totally, like, connected with me the way I was kind of hoping it would. Like, I was really hoping for some scenes that would really, like, hit me in the gut and really be like, ooh, like, that's really sad, or that's really powerful. And maybe that's partly due to the way the story's told, that I didn't really feel that too much. There are a few scenes that do get, pretty good at that, and did get to me a little bit, but nothing that really impacted me on the level I was hoping it would, at least from the way the trailers looked. But, besides that, this movie does have some great scenes. One in particular involving a convenience store. You'll know it when you see it. That's an absolute highlight of the film. Just this long sequence that is funny, and it's it's really well done. It's really great. I was definitely a showcase of the performances too there. And overall, it's a movie that I was entertained by, and I especially enjoyed the performances and the way it looks and feels, but I couldn't help but feel like this movie could have been something a bit more. It felt like it was like a good version of this movie, but I know there's a better one out there that could have maybe even been more emotional and more well told and all that stuff. So, I enjoyed the movie. I'm glad I saw it. I think if you like Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh and you're interested in these types of movies, the sort of like romance drama, then I think absolutely could be worth checking out. I just don't know if I'd say, best of the year or anything like that. It's not a movie that really changed my life or anything like that. So I'd probably give it a B. Pretty good, not great, but check it out maybe. I think you could enjoy it. And moving on is our next film, Memoir of a Snail. And this is a movie I went to an advanced screening of a few days ago. They had a live stream Q&A with the director and one of the actors, and that was just a pretty fun experience. Got to hear like a half hour of these people talk before the movie started, and I wasn't entirely sure what to expect from this movie. But hearing this Q&A right before the movie got me more excited and nervous at the same time. It's just like he was talking about all these things in the movie that's like, this is not, a kid's movie, it's not a family movie, like this movie goes into dark places, and he's like, it's very, very effed up, and all that stuff, so, and he's talking about just some of the behind the scenes things too, like there's just like a story of like, I think a woman's tip of her finger came off while filming, and like it was just on the set, on the set somewhere, and it's just like they found it later and they put it in the movie, and like the opening scene, you can see like in the opening shot her fingernail in there or fingertip in there somewhere. So that was certainly a way to get me interested in the movie. But besides that, I didn't really know totally what to expect from this movie beyond the fact that it is a stop motion animated movie, but once again, not at all for kids. If you are listening to this as an adult and you have kids, do not take them to this movie. It is not for kids at all. And it's for adults, but in a different way than something like Sausage Party, which is just totally raunchy and, the most like sexually explicit movie out there. It's not like that. It is raunchy, but it's also dark and deals with heavy subject matter. So it's a bit more of a drama than something like Sausage Party is. And that makes it pretty interesting. I've never seen other stuff from this director, but I've heard very good things about one of his films, Mary and Max, and I will definitely be checking that out after this because I think this is a really good movie, and I'm very curious to see what else he's done. But one thing I have to shout out immediately is this movie's great character work. You feel for everyone in it. You feel like these people in the movie have real lives, which is a very impressive feat for especially like a stop motion movie where you're literally looking at these fake people. Like you're not even like fooled by this illusion that you're watching like real people in live action. Like the movie in a lot of ways feels like a documentary, and it's because of the fantastic writing and direction. It's made like a documentary, but it's all fiction. There's like a lot of narration, a lot of voiceover, talking about, this girl's life throughout, she's kind of like narrating and talking about her life throughout all the years. And I think it's at a level of description that totally fools you. The obscure levels of details and random events throughout like the entire film just make it seem all the more real. Like, it's this thing where, someone's telling a story, and there's just so many details in here that are so bizarre and, like, specifically thought out that you're like, there's no way they could be making that up. That's what this movie feels like. And that was great. I love that about this movie. There's also just very impressive stop motion, especially for an indie production that had a seemingly minuscule budget. There's really good animation here that just a nice level of detail. The opening shot, especially, was something the director was hyping up a lot, and the actress he was with was hyping it up, and it's just like this one long take. It's so effective. I love the way it looks, and really gets you like set up for the movie. Just a great use of the budget and resources. They really knocked it out of the park there. But going back to the story, this is a story that feels very human. Like for a movie that's called Memoir of a Snail, and like it's a lot of snail stuff in this movie, but it is revolving around humans. The main character is a human, and there's some, despite all the randomness and very obscure stuff and the maybe like wacky bizarre humor here, this is actually a pretty heavy movie about loss and family and moving forward, especially. And all these things really come together. There's some scenes here that are actually pretty devastating, but even beyond that, the movie is actually very funny too, shockingly funny, because of how dark a lot of the movie and the humor is. It's all just done, and it's this weird tonal balance it strikes, where it'll have these awful things happening, and you're like, kind of sad watching it, and then like the humor just comes out of nowhere, and it really makes you laugh. It's very funny. Actually, it's probably a weird case where I think the humor for me works better than the drama, but it all really comes together nicely. And speaking of the title also, which I mentioned, Memoir of a Snail, this movie does have a lot of smart snail metaphors. It's just something I want to note because, the movie just, on a surface level, it works, but there actually are a lot of smart uses where this whole thing with the snail plays into what the movie's trying to say. And there's a lot there. I think if you pay attention, you'll notice some of it just in the physical things and then kind of what people are saying that makes sense. It all kind of comes together. Again, something the director was talking about a lot in the Q&A before the movie is just how the snail ties into everything. And they actually did a really nice job of that. I felt it throughout the whole movie, so that was very strong. Getting into some issues I had with the movie, though, one thing is definitely the pacing. It was very noticeable. The movie's like maybe an hour and a half, and similar to We Live in Time, it went by pretty slow, but I would say maybe even slower than that movie. Like to me, this movie probably felt like 2 hours long, like a half hour longer than it really was, which isn't good for the pacing at all. And I don't know why that was. It wasn't like the story wasn't moving. It just felt like a lot of the time I was just sitting there, and it really just it was a very slow burn. And another thing is that I think this movie had a few too many points where I felt like there was absolutely no hope. It felt like it was being a little too hard on the characters and the audience. And what I mean by that is it had so many dark things going on, and even though there was humor, like, it just felt like the movie was constantly beating up these characters. Like, and maybe, I don't know if it was for the sake of just being emotional or for the sake of getting a reaction out of us, but it just felt like, to me, there were a few too many times where I was just like, really? Like, you're really going on this character again? Like, things are, they're already terrible. Like, you're gonna keep getting worse? Alright. And the movie did that a few times. That, I think, took a little bit away from me from the emotional stuff, but it still did work. By the end, I think it redeemed itself a little bit in that regard. The way things kind of play out in the last third especially. It really, like, emphasizes that, and I think kind of justifies a little bit of what it was doing. But, yeah, I mean, just, I have to say, this is a very well-made film, and very much worth seeing and supporting. Besides, a few problems I had, like the pacing is definitely the big one. This is actually just a really touching film, very funny and creative and sad, but it just kind of brings out every emotion in you. And I just really was impressed by the way this movie was. It was a great experience and a great use of the stop motion animation, which is something that isn't used nearly enough. I love stop motion. It's such a nice, refreshing way to see an animated film. And I know how much work goes into those films, which is, again, why I'm saying this movie should absolutely be seen. especially because it's an indie film. It's not even like you're watching an Aardman film, which has all the resources behind it. Like, this movie had to work. I'm sure the people behind this movie were working day and night to get this thing made. So, if you can see it and you're interested at all, I think it's worth your time. There have been a ton of great animated films this year. This is no exception. It's just a really solid movie, and I'd give it a B+. It's very good. But that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd at MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.